All right, in this video, we're going to look at some special cases of multiplying binomials together. At this point, you should be fairly proficient at multiplying two binomials together. And so what we're going to look at is two special cases where on one hand, you could just kind of completely ignore because you know how to multiply binomials. It doesn't take that long to begin with. But there are some advantages of having some shortcuts that will actually benefit you when we get into our next major lesson, which is on factoring. So it is worth our time to get good at this, but it is not critical for your success, at least in multiplication. All right, so for a warm up today, multiply using the FOIL method, also known as just distributing. Be on the lookout for a pattern. So what you'll notice here is that I'm asking you to take x plus 1, the quantity squared, which means we have x plus 1 times x plus 1. First of all, before we get too deep in this, let's make sure we understand the difference and what some of you might want to do here. So for example, back when we learned exponents, we looked at something where it was like a times b, let's say to the second power. Well, a times b to the second power literally means a times b times a times b. And that means there's just four things being multiplied and end up being a squared times b squared. Okay. That is similar looking, but not the same as what we're doing right now, which is a plus b squared. Some of you are going to, and I honestly think some of you will kind of do this the entire time, despite hearing and seeing numerous examples, but this is not 100% not equal. It's not saying not equal. It is not saying just do a squared plus b squared. In other words, we do have a rule when it's factors. A times b, the quantity squared. We know the rule is we just give each of them the power. But a plus b squared is not the same thing. Why? Because of what we're going to learn today. So please keep this in your back pocket. This right here, not a thing. False. And one of your homework problems will have you kind of explore maybe in more depth, like a number example. So I'll save that for then. Okay, so here you go. A good chance for you to practice your FOIL. A plus b squared, x plus 1, the quantity squared. As you can see in my note, it means just do x plus 1 times x plus 1. So I know using FOIL that I do x times x, and I get x squared. And then I do x times 1 right here, and that gives me plus 1x. And then I do 1 times x, which gives me plus another x. And then I do 1 times 1, giving me 1. And so my answer is x squared plus x is 2x plus 1. All right, so we're just going to do that for the remaining problems. Please pause the video and do those yourself. All right, here we go. X plus 2, x plus 2, FOIL, x times x squared, x times 2 is plus 2x, and 2 times x is plus 2x, and of course 2 times 2 is 4. So we get an answer of x squared. At the end we have plus 4, and in the middle 2x plus 2x is 4x. X minus 3 times x minus 3. FOIL gives me x squared, gives me negative 3x, gives me another negative 3x, and a negative times a negative is a positive 9. So then that gives me x squared got the 9 at the end, and in the middle, I've got these two negative 3x's, so that would make negative 6x. All right, keep going. 2x plus 3 times 2x plus 3. All right, don't forget the 2 times the 2 and the x times the x, so that's 4x squared. And in the middle, I'm going to have plus 6x, and then 3 times 2x is plus 6x, and then 3 times 3 is 9. So my answer is 4x squared. I got the plus 9 at the end, and plus 12x in the middle. All right, almost done. And along the way here, I'm hoping that a pattern is emerging in your eyes. And I'm trying to point that pattern out as I go with the different colors. 3x times 3x is just going to be square the 3, square the x, right? So 9x squared. Then I've got 3x times negative 5 minus 15x. I've got another negative 5 times 3x, so another negative 15x. And then finally, we have negative 5 times negative 5, which is positive 25. 9x squared, 25 on the end, and in the middle, we've got negative 30x. All right, and then finally, last one, a plus b times a plus b. I do a times a, which is simply a squared. I do a times b, which is ab. I have a b times an a, which alphabetically is ab. And then finally, I have b times b, which is b squared. Add them together, I get a squared. I get b squared at the end. And in the middle, ab plus ab is 2ab. All right. Of all 6 of the problems we did, the last one is the most important because the last one gives you the shortcut that you want. Notice to find what a plus b squared, the quantity squared is. My clicker's not working, so I'm just looking at F here. Looking at a plus b times a plus b, notice what the answer is in relation to the question. It starts off with simply a squared. It ends with b squared, which is kind of what we said the answer wasn't going to be if we just tried to use the factoring, right? We said it wasn't a squared plus b squared. It isn't a squared plus b squared, but that is part of the answer. So the good news here is this is pretty obvious. We get an a squared, we get a b squared. So whatever the first term is squared, whatever the second term is squared. In the middle, however, what do we have? We have a times b. So we're mixing the a times the b. And then we are doubling it times 2. Why are we doubling it? Well, look at every single problem. Look at the different colors. I have 2 of the exact same thing, a, b. On part E, I have 2 negative 15x's. So doubling negative 15 gives me negative 30. Doubling 6x gives me 12x. Doubling 2x gives me 4x, etc. And how do I get 2x? Well, every single time it ends up being just the front one times the back one as a shortcut. So this is only in the case of you have the exact same binomial and you square it. So the answer can be found very easily by just going straight to the question. So let's redo. Let me show you how quick the shortcut is. So here's how I'm going to do part B. Okay. I'm going to look at the x and I'm going to square it. I'm going to look at the 2 in the end and I'm going to square it, but I'm going to save room in the middle. To get the middle term, I'm going to pay attention to the sign. It's a positive 2 times x is positive 2x. I'm going to double that, 4x, and I'm done. I'm going to square the x, I get x squared. I'm going to square the negative 3, and I get positive 9. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. I'm going to double negative 3 to get to negative 6, negative 6x. All right, keeping that in mind, let's also look at this as a graph here, or as a table. So this is a plus b times a plus b. So this is a square, right, because they're the same side length. So that's also why this is called a binomial square. And then if we take a look at this, as a visual, we see that the big square in the middle here would be a squared. We see this little square at the bottom would just be b times b. There's your b squared. And then this longer rectangle here is b times a. And this is the exact same rectangle, just turned on its side, b times a. And so what's the answer? You have an a squared. You have two of these ab's, and you have b squared. And that serves as your shortcut. The danger for those of you who do not pay attention or notice details, the danger is you are going to bypass everything we just showed you, and you're just going to try to square both pieces and walk away. And that is absolutely wrong. Okay? So do not fall into that trap. Do not be that kid. Let's go ahead and practice this with some examples. And I would like you to use the pattern we discovered. Let's save ourselves some time. So the answer to this question is simply going to be square the first term right in the front. Give yourself a little room. 7 squared is plus 49. And in the middle, you have x times 7, so that's 7x. And then we double 7x. So that becomes 14x. Let's verify it just one last time, just to show you why and what's happening. X times x is x squared. X times 7 is plus 7x. 7 times x is another 7x. And 7 times 7 is 49. It's this fact that you have the exact same number in the middle is why we can just do the shortcut of multiply them together and double. So this is simply going to be an x squared. It's going to be a plus 16. And in the middle is going to be negative 4x doubled. So negative 8x. When you do this one, don't forget to square the 2 and the x. 4x squared plus 25 on the end. And then remember, we multiply them together and double. So don't get confused that there's already a 2 here. That's irrelevant. We multiply them together, and I get 10, and I double it, so that's going to be 20x. Last two. 6x minus 1, the quantity squared, is going to be 36x squared. Positive 1. Notice on all of these problems, it's always positive on the end, because whether or not it's a negative 4 or a positive 5, you're doing a negative 4 squared, you're doing a positive 5 squared. And so either way, you're going to get a positive. The middle term is negative 6x doubled, so negative 12x. All right. I know we don't like fractions, but that doesn't mean we should avoid them. We should always face the thing that scares us, frankly. 1/3 x plus 2/3. We're going to square the first term. 1/3 times 1/3 is not hard. It is simply 1/9 x squared. The last term is 2/3 times 2/3, which is 2 times 2 over 3 times 3. The middle term is going to be the 2 multiplied together. So that's just 1/3 times 2/3. So that gives me 2/9. And then we double it. So times another 2 just turns a 2/9 into a 4/9. Don't forget your variable x. And there we go. So you can see how this is a lesson you can kind of ignore as long as you understand that 6x minus 1 is just telling you to do 6x minus 1 times 6x minus 1. Then you can just do it regular old multiplication. But if you can learn this, it's going to have 2 advantages. Number 1, you can do this question faster. Number two, it's going to help you when we do our next unit, which is on factoring, where we undo the multiplication. All right, that's it. Hopefully this makes sense. Pay attention to the details. That's how we go from an A to a not A. All right, let me know if you need any help.